Early autumn along the Carolina coast has a way of tasting like salt and memory. Live oaks lean over the streets of Charleston, their branches draped in Spanish moss like old stories refusing to let go. On a late Sunday afternoon, as church bells faded and gulls circled the harbor, Nathan Carter turned his vintage Bronco onto Rutledge Avenue and saw 3 children huddled beneath a fig tree. The oldest girl, no more than 11, held a toddler on one hip and wrapped her other arm around a boy whose cheeks were streaked with dirt. Scattered around them lay an overturned laundry basket, tiny socks plastered to wet leaves, and 2 baby bottles smudged with mud. A woman swayed by the wrought iron gate with a half-empty bottle of cinnamon whiskey, lips moving in a steady stream of curses that cut through the air like broken glass. "You little leeches!" she slurred, smacking the gate with her palm. "You think I owe you? I owe you nothing." The oldest girl flinched but straightened. "Please, Aunt Deborah, it's almost evening. We won't bother you. Don't make us sleep outside." Something in Nathan's chest pulled tight, the way a violin string tightens before it sings or snaps. He was 42, a man who built a software company from a secondhand laptop and a stubborn belief that data could make life better. People in Charleston called him a millionaire with a sailor's patience and a surgeon's calm. But calm is a thin coat of paint over old wood. Underneath, there are knots. He killed the engine, stepped out, and walked toward the children. "Hey," he said gently, shrugging off his canvas jacket. "It's getting chilly." He draped the jacket over the boy's shoulders. The boy jolted, then held still, eyes wide. The woman at the gate noticed Nathan and snorted. "And who are you? The coat fairy?" "Neighbor," Nathan lied evenly. He wasn't a neighbor exactly. He'd followed an address scribbled inside an old Bible he'd kept since he was a child at St. Augustine Home up in Columbia. He had come to speak with someone who once lived at this address, an old benefactor whose letters had stopped years ago. He hadn't expected this. Deborah raised the bottle. "Mind your business." Nathan looked at the girl. "What's your name?" She lifted her chin. "Grace." "Grace?" he said, nodding. "And your brother and sister?" "Noah and Lily." She tightened her hold on the toddler. "We don't make trouble. We can do chores. Please, sir, don't call the police. They'll separate us." Nathan swallowed. He knew the fear behind her eyes because he had carried it himself. When he was 12, he and his little sister, Emma, had been separated for 6 months after a judge read a report by a stranger who thought they'd do better apart for now. For now can turn into forever if nobody fights. Deborah hit the gate again. "Get lost, rich boy. Unless you're paying the mortgage, you don't get a say." "Is their guardian home?" Nathan asked. Deborah sneered. "That would be me." Nathan took out his phone. "Then you and I are going to talk sober tomorrow morning. I'll bring coffee. What these children need right now is warmth and food." He took a slow step closer to Grace and lowered his voice. "Grace, could I carry Noah to the car? It's warm there. I'll leave the doors open. Nothing scary. We're not going far." Grace stared at him, measuring the distance between his words and his eyes. She searched for a crack. He let her. At last, she nodded once. Deborah hurled the bottle. Nathan jerked his shoulder. It shattered against the brick post. The sound exploded across the yard, startling Lily into a wail. Grace tightened, trembling, but didn't run. Nathan's voice stayed calm. "That's enough." Neighbors peered through lace curtains. A passing couple slowed. Nathan scooped Noah into his arms. He weighed almost nothing, and crooked a finger toward Grace. "Come on," he said. "Tonight, you're not sleeping under a tree." Deborah's laugh rasped. "Take them then. You'll bring them back once they drain you dry." Nathan didn't answer. He opened the Bronco's back door. Grace climbed in with Lily and buckled the baby into a cracked booster seat, her hands moving with a mother's competence that made Nathan's throat ache. He drove 3 blocks to his townhouse near Colonial Lake and parked in the rear alley, where ivy swallowed the old brick and green. Inside, the house was immaculate but silent. 2 floors of polished heart pine and framed nautical maps. An elegant loneliness arranged by an interior designer who had never once asked what kind of lullabies Nathan remembered. Grace hesitated on the threshold. "A house with no sound," she whispered. Nathan set Noah on the sofa, fetched blankets, turned on the gas fireplace, and went to the kitchen. 15 minutes later, he returned with grilled cheese sandwiches, cut into triangles, apple slices sprinkled with cinnamon, and a bottle of warmed milk he was almost sure he made right. Grace hovered, suspicious. You're not going to send us away after we eat?" "No," he said. "Eat first. We'll talk after." He showed her the baby bottle. "If it's not right, tell me. I'll try again." They ate slowly. It took 3 tries to coax Lily to drink. When Noah finally stopped shivering, Grace sagged, the last of her strength seeping into the blanket. She fought sleep like it was an enemy. When her head tipped, Nathan tucked a throw over her shoulders and sat across the room, elbows on his knees, listening to the tiny sounds. Noah's steady breathing, Lily's soft sighs, the distant hiss of the fireplace. The house sounded different already. He caught himself glancing at the staircase, almost expecting Emma to come clattering down like she used to, hair messy, grin wide. He hadn't spoken to his sister in 2 years. Not since their last argument about the settlement from a company he'd sold. She'd called him greedy, he'd called her ungrateful, and they had both used the words as weapons. He had mailed her letters. She had mailed them back unopened. Somewhere along the way, pride had built a wall high enough to cast a shadow over everything. Nathan rose, pulled an old photograph from a drawer, and slipped it into his pocket. In it, a lanky teenage boy with 2 long sleeves stood beside a girl with braids, both squinting into South Carolina sun. They had shared a single ice cream and 1,000 whispered promises. "We will never leave each other behind." He looked at Grace asleep on his couch and made a decision. By morning, rain tamped down the streets to a dull shine. Nathan brewed strong coffee and called a woman whose number he kept saved under Jess, St. Aug home. Jessica Monroe answered on the second ring. She had been a junior social worker then. Now she directed a foster support nonprofit called Harbor Hands. "Nathan?" Her voice warmed instantly. "To what do I owe this rare delight? I need help. 3 kids. Aunt's the guardian, but there's neglect. It's bad." "Where are they now?" "With me. I intend to keep them safe, legally." "You know that means court." "I know. Names?" "Grace," he said. "Noah and Lily." Jessica was quiet for a beat. "I can be at your place in 40 minutes. And Nathan, thank you. Not just for the kids, for calling." He ended the call and, on impulse, texted a number he'd memorized despite himself. "Emma, I need you, if not for me, for 3 kids who could use the sister you always were." He stared at the screen, waited for the dots that never appeared, and exhaled. Jessica arrived with a file bag and a calm that steadied rooms. She spoke to Grace at eye level, asked permission before entering their space, and listened in a way that made words line up, brave and orderly. Grace told her the truth. Their parents had died in a car crash 7 months ago. Aunt Deborah had moved them to the old house, and then to the porch, and then, sometimes, to the yard. There had been nights of yelling, days of hunger, and mornings of silence that scraped. "What do you want right now?" Jessica asked softly. Grace glanced at her siblings. "To not be split up," she whispered, "and to sleep without listening." Jessica nodded. "We can fight for that." The fight started faster than anyone liked. By afternoon, Deborah had filed for an emergency order demanding the children's return. She'd found a lawyer who smelled opportunity like a shark smells blood. A well-dressed man named Jason Pike, whose glossy ads promised aggressive results. He moved to paint Nathan as a reckless interloper, a wealthy stranger snatching children for the thrill of a headline. Deborah coached, wore pearls that weren't hers, and a cardigan that didn't quite hide the anger thrumming beneath her skin. Nathan hired a guardian ad litem named Paulette Rhodes and retained Jessica's nonprofit counsel, a veteran attorney named Mark Ellis with a voice like dry oak. Their hearing would be Wednesday. Parallel to the legal scramble, another story unfolded across town in a small diner called May's Kitchen, where a shy teenage boy reshelved plates with careful hands. His name was Isaiah Bell, and his connection to the children across the city would not be obvious to anyone who didn't believe in the geography of grace. Isaiah had aged out of foster care in June with a garbage bag of clothes and a counselor's business card. In August, he'd landed the dishwashing job. In September, he'd rented a room above the diner with a mattress and a window that let in the scent of bacon at sunrise and rain at night. May, the owner, knew what it meant to begin again. She had a scar over her left eyebrow from a life that broke and was mended. She hired Isaiah not because he was the best dishwasher she had ever met, but because he asked, in a voice that didn't know how to lie, for a chance. On Tuesday morning, a woman came into the diner holding a toddler who shrieked until the pancakes arrived. The woman had kind eyes and tired shoulders. She placed a donation jar by the register that read "Harbor Hands Winter Coats Dry. Drive!" and stuck a flyer beside the daily special. "Foster families need us." Isaiah read the flyer and traced the charity name. That afternoon, on his 10-minute break, he carried the jar through the kitchen to May's office. "You mind if I keep this by the register?" he asked. May looked up. "We keep it where folks can see it. Better yet, tell them why it matters." Isaiah cleared his throat, as though preparing for a song he hadn't learned yet. "There are 3 kids," he said. "I don't know their names, but I think I might be able to help." "How?" He held up his phone, flush with the kind of courage you get when you've had to find it by yourself. "By the time the lunch rush ends," he said, "TikTok will." May chuckled. "Let's see what the internet is worth on a rainy day." By close, the video had 68,000 views. Isaiah's soft voice describing coats for little people who did nothing wrong, and the jar was full of bills and notes. One note, written in a careful hand, said, "For the girl who holds the other 2 like a hero." Isaiah tucked it under the jar and felt a filament of purpose stretch between an upstairs room where he used to stare at water stains and a townhouse where an exhausted man folded small socks for the first time in 20 years. Wednesday came like a held breath. In the Charleston County Family Court, everything smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and fear. Nathan wore a navy suit and a stubborn hope. Grace clutched the hem of his jacket with one hand and pressed her other palm to Noah's warm back as he slept in Linda's arms. Linda was Nathan's operations manager and, more importantly, a woman who could swaddle an anxious boardroom with a look and a cup of tea. Judge Keegan, a lean man who had smiled roughly 3 times in the past decade, took the bench. Jason Pike rose with theatrical gravity. "Your Honor, my client, Ms. Deborah Whitlow, is the children's blood. She has lawful guardianship. Mr. Carter may be rich, but wealth is not a substitute for kinship. He abducted these children." Mark stood. "Your Honor, words matter. He didn't abduct. He protected. He didn't hide. He called DSS in and retained a guardian ad litem. He didn't claim ownership. He offered shelter. We have photographs, neighbors' statements, school absence records, and we have a witness." He called a neighbor, Mr. Albright, who testified to hearing crying too many nights to count. He called Jessica, who spoke precisely, letting the facts stand without embroidery. Then he called a surprise witness Nathan didn't know about until the back door opened, and a woman in scrubs stepped into the aisle, untidy bun and tired eyes. She introduced herself as Carla Benson, a nurse at the free clinic where Deborah had come for headaches and left with pamphlets she had tossed in the trash. "She told me she didn't want them," Carla said quietly, staring at her shoes. "She said they were anchors. I told her not to say that out loud again, but she said it loudly, in the lobby." Deborah cursed under her breath. Judge Keegan banged the gavel once. "Order!" Paulette, the guardian ad litem, read from her report. "Grace has been parenting her siblings. She is hypervigilant, shows parentified behavior, and fears separation. Noah is underweight, Lily is behind on immunizations. All 3 children exhibit signs consistent with neglect." Jason crossed his arms. "Anecdotes." "Data," Paulette countered. And before you accuse me of bias, I visited Ms. Whitlow's home this morning. The refrigerator was empty except for beer. The back door had no lock. Silence pressed against the ceiling. Judge Keegan folded his hands. Mr. Carter, step forward. Nathan did. You understand that temporary custody is a responsibility measured not in dollars, but in sleepless nights, therapy appointments, and the kind of patience no startup accelerates? Yes, sir. Do you have support? Yes. Family. He wasn't sure why the word came so easily. Maybe because he believed it would be true by dusk. And a community that shows up. The judge peered over his glasses. Not many men with your bank account show up in family court, Mr. Carter. It is better spent than at a gala. He nodded once, like a man using up his entire quota of feelings for the day. Temporary custody to Mr. Carter for 60 days, pending review and home evaluation. Ms. Whitlow will have supervised visitation at Harbor Hands. Deborah sputtered. Supervised? Those are my sister's kids. They're children, the judge said, not bargaining chips. The gavel came down, a sound like a door closing or opening. Outside, rain had crisped the air. Nathan crouched to meet Grace's eyes. You're coming home with me, he said, voice steady. All of you. Grace's mouth wobbled. For 60 days, she whispered. For as long as it takes, he said. And maybe longer. He swallowed. I can't promise the world, Grace, but I can promise this. I'm not walking away. She searched his face again, then nodded, a movement so small it could have been a breath. She took his hand. The weeks that followed were made of both soft things and hard ones. Soft. Lily's squeal when Nathan learned to make blueberry pancakes shaped like dolphins. Noah's laugh when Linda pretended the vacuum was a dragon. Grace's first night with her own lamp, her own bed, and a borrowed copy of Little Women that Jessica insisted every fierce girl should meet. Hard. Grace's nightmares, door slams, broken bottles, her heart banging like a trapped bird. Noah's fever that sent them to the ER at 2 a.m. Lily's refusal to nap anywhere but on the living room rug, as if she needed to see every exit to believe she wouldn't be left behind. Hard, too, were the quiet moments when Nathan went upstairs, opened the box of returned letters addressed to Emma Carter, and sat on the floor with his back against the bed. He would trace the postmarks and say her name like a prayer, parallel to the small domestic rebellions. Isaiah's video spiraled into something larger than a jar by a register. College students brought boxes of coats. A barber on King Street offered free cuts for foster kids. A church youth group delivered quilts stitched with star patterns and blessings. Harbor Hands bought a second freezer with the money and filled it with meals for families, like a promise you could reheat on cold nights. On a Saturday morning, May appeared on Nathan's porch with a stack of containers labeled shrimp and grits and a teenage boy hovering at the bottom step. This is Isaiah, May said. He's responsible for half the casseroles on the peninsula this week. Isaiah shoved his hands in his pockets. And for the video that made everyone cry, he added, mortified and proud at once. He glanced around the entryway. I grew up on the north side. Place like this. It smells like lemon and books. You're welcome here, Nathan said simply. Grace peered around Nathan's elbow. Isaiah grinned at her like a brother who recognizes another general in a small army. You like waffles? He asked. Her face lit. Is the Pope Catholic? Good answer. That afternoon, they ate waffles until everyone surrendered. Later, when Isaiah left, he slipped a note into Grace's hand. It read, I was you, keep going. 2 things shifted everything. The first came on a Wednesday, 3 weeks into the custodial period, when Nathan opened his mailbox and found a letter with no return address. Inside was a photograph. He and Emma, ages 13 and 11, seated on a picnic blanket behind the group home. On the back, in the familiar narrow handwriting he'd given up hoping to see, it said, I'm sorry. I'm in town. If you want to meet, come to the water at sunset. E. He went. The battery was gold and blue, the harbor slapping stones in easy breaths. Emma stood by the seawall in a denim jacket with frayed cuffs. Time had turned her into the sort of woman who could pick herself up out of ash and still smell faintly of lilacs. They stared at each other for a long time. "I was angry," she said, before he could speak. "So was I." "I thought you forgot where we came from. I thought you didn't want what I offered." "We were both wrong." Her gaze flicked past his shoulder. "Who are they?" He turned. Grace held Noah by the railing, hair blowing, pointing at pelicans like she owned the sky. Lily babbled in Linda's arms. "Family," he said, feeling the words settle and root. "If they'll have me." Emma's eyes softened. "You were always the one who brought lost things home." He laughed, unsteady. "I'm trying to do it right this time." "Then let me help." She slid her arm through his. "Let me be their aunt. The good kind." The second shift came in the form of a woman with trembling hands standing on Nathan's porch late on a stormy Monday. Deborah. Her makeup had run, carving tracks through pride. "I hate myself," she said, voice shredded. "And that doesn't change anything for them, I know. But I saw the video, the coats and the court, and I just..." She broke off and braced a hand against the doorframe as if the whole world tilted. "I want to get sober." Nathan did not trust her words, but he trusted actions done daily enough to grow teeth. "There's a bed at Harbor House, 2 blocks from here," he said quietly. "A counselor named Zach, who used to drink bourbon for breakfast and now runs marathons. If you go there tonight, if you show up again tomorrow and the day after, we can talk about what comes next." She nodded once, eyes slick. "I don't deserve forgiveness." "None of us do," he said. "It's still how the world keeps from tearing." Emma stepped forward from the hallway, measuring Deborah's face the way women who've survived learn to measure the world, accurately, without romance. "I'll drive you," Emma said. "No detours." Deborah looked startled. "Why would you?" "Because I had a brother who didn't give up on me," Emma said. "And because those kids need a world where grown-ups keep showing up. 60 days can rebuild a life poorly made. Not all at once, not perfectly, but brick by brick, habit by habit." Nathan learned to braid hair and to say, "Take a breath," instead of "calm down." He learned that Grace loved math because it made sense when nothing else did, that Noah hoarded rocks in his pillowcase, and that Lily liked to sleep with one sock halfway on, like a flag claiming territory. With the help of Mark and Paulette, they petitioned for permanent guardianship with a path to adoption if it remained in the children's best interest. Deborah, to her own surprise, kept showing up to recovery. She worked janitorial nights at the hospital, attended dawn meetings where they said names in circles, and learned new words like accountability and amends. She asked for supervised visits, and when they met at Harbor Hands, she sat on the floor and watched Lily topple blocks, and did not cry when Lily toddled into Emma's lap instead of hers. She said to Grace, "There are some apologies you can't ask a child to carry, so I won't. I'll carry this one myself." Grace, who had learned not to trust quick promises, accepted slowly. Some afternoons, she stood on the back steps of Nathan's house and stared at the sky the way kids do when they're trying to find the end of a question. One evening, when the live oaks were black cutouts against coral light, she came inside, slid the photograph of Nathan and Emma onto the dining table, and said, "I think we can be a family." Nathan's throat went tight. "Me too." Can we call you Nate?" she asked, almost shy. He smiled. "You can call me anything, long as you call me." She rolled her eyes, but the corner of her mouth crept upward. "Okay, Nate." The final hearing was held the week before Christmas. The courtroom smelled like pine because someone had set a tiny tree on the clerk's desk and hung it with paper cranes. Judge Keegan listened to reports and asked 3 questions that mattered. Are the children safe? Are they loved? Are they heard? "Yes, Your Honor," Paulette said. "On all counts." Deborah stood. "I am working," she said. "I am sober 48 days. I'm not ready to be a mother. I want what is best for them. I believe hard as it is, that what's best is this." She gestured toward Nathan and Emma and Jessica and Linda and Isaiah and May, who had all packed into the benches like a choir. "A whole net to catch them." The judge nodded once. "Mr. Carter?" Nathan rose. "I will provide for them," he said. "But more than that, I will be there. I know what it is to be left. I will not leave." Judge Keegan looked at Grace. "Young lady, do you want to say anything?" Grace stood very straight. "Yes, sir. I want to stay with Nate," she swallowed. "And with Aunt Emma and Miss Jessica and Miss Linda and our friend Isaiah, who makes waffles. I want to visit Aunt Deborah at Harbor Hands, but I want to sleep in the same house as Noah and Lily. I don't want to be the parent anymore. I want to be a kid." The judge's mouth twitched, the sort of almost smile that changes a weather system. Spoken like the bravest person in this room. He lifted the pen and signed, "Permanent guardianship to Mr. Carter, with a path to adoption as recommended by the guardian ad litem after 6 months continued stability. Supervised visitation for Ms. Whitlow at Harbor Hands. Court is adjourned." No one moved for a heartbeat. Then the tiny tree on the clerk's desk trembled, as if it had caught a draft from all the people who exhaled at once. Outside, Charleston was crisp as a postcard. Bells pealed. Isaiah took a selfie no one could later explain without using the word joy. May passed out cinnamon rolls the size of baseball mitts. Jessica wiped her eyes for the first time anyone had seen. Linda declared they had to get home before the frosting melted. Emma looped her arm through Nathan's and leaned her head on his shoulder. "Hey, Nate," Grace said, trying the name on her tongue like a new song. "When we get home, can we hang stockings?" "All 3, Nathan said, "and an extra." "For who?" He hesitated. "For the person any one of us might still be missing, just in case they find their way." Grace nodded, as if this made sense in a language both of them were learning. She reached for his hand. No ceremony, just a simple, ordinary gesture that rearranged the furniture of his heart. Noah slipped his small hand into Emma's. Lily clapped when a carriage horse trotted by and yelled, "Dog!" That night, they hung stockings on the mantel. They ate shrimp and grits on the living room floor because furniture is sometimes too formal for miracles. They lit a candle for the people gone and a second for the people who might yet return. Emma tucked Lily into bed with the sock half on. Linda left with 2 foil-wrapped plates for the security guard who never got a night off. Isaiah texted a picture of 2 new jar labels, summer camp fund and dental visits. When the house was finally quiet, Nathan climbed the stairs and paused by Grace's door. She was awake, book open, hair a messy halo. He knocked on the frame. "May I?" She pushed the book aside. "Sure." He sat on the edge of the bed and pulled something from his pocket. A small notebook with a worn leather cover, the first page inscribed in looping script, "Faith is a light small enough to carry." "This was given to me once," he said, "by someone who believed I could be more than my worst day. I want you to have it. Write whatever you want inside. Lists, secrets, math, dreams." Grace traced the cover. "Will you read it?" "Only if you hand it to me." She thought for a long second, then slid it under her pillow as if tucking away treasure. "Hey, Nate?" "Yeah?" "You didn't leave. I told you I wouldn't." "Okay," she said, eyes drifting shut, voice caught between this world and the next. "Then I think I can be a kid now." He stayed until her breathing deepened. Down the hall, Noah snored soft and silly. In the guest room, Emma slept with one arm thrown over her face, as if keeping out too much good news. The rain had stopped. The oaks were quiet. Somewhere, a car door closed and footsteps faded. Somewhere else, a woman woke to an alarm at Harbor House, swung her legs off a narrow bed, and chose to keep choosing. Nathan went downstairs, turned off the tree lights, and stood in the doorway looking out at the street. For a breathless moment, he felt the house expanding around him, not bigger exactly, but fuller, like a ship loading ballast so it can weather real oceans. He whispered into the quiet, to the memory of a boy who used to press his face against the glass of the world and wonder if anyone would ever open the door. "We made it home." Then he shut the door, slid the bolt with a soft click, and went back to the living room where 3 stockings swayed gently as if something invisible had brushed by, something like a promise kept.